I'll never forget that night. The pizzeria where I worked was about to close and I was getting ready to head home, exhausted after a long day. It was almost 10 p.m., and the place was dead quiet. I was alone at the counter, wrapping up the last orders and counting the cash register when the phone rang. The sound echoed through the empty space, breaking the silence that had started to settle in. Since I was the only employee there at the time, it was up to me to answer the call. Picked up the phone with the usual greeting. "Tony's Pizzeria, how can I help you?" On the other end, there was complete silence. Nothing. No sound, no voice. I thought it was weird, but figured it might just be a problem with the line. I hung up after about a minute, but almost immediately, the phone rang again. I answered. Once more and again, silence. I was about to hang up, annoyed, when I heard a low, icy voice, almost a whisper, from an older woman. She spoke directly without any small talk and said she wanted a plain pizza delivered to her house. I stayed polite on the phone, but inside I was panicking. I just wanted to go home and end my shift. I yelled to my boss, who was in the back office, letting him know someone had ordered a delivery. He told me I'd have to take it since there was no one else available. I was irritated at first, but then I thought about the tip. Older folks usually tipped well, and the address didn't seem too far, so I decided it was fine. I wrote down the address and told her I'd be there soon, but she hung up before I could confirm the details. I thought that was rude, but I brushed it off and shouted to the cook that I needed a plain pizza. My boss told me to head home after the delivery since the place would be closed by then. A little before 10, I got in my car and put the address into the GPS. The house was about 7 miles away, in a quiet part of town I didn't know well. The GPS led me down narrow, poorly lit streets until I reached a small one-story house on a deserted, silent road. I grabbed the pizza and walked up to the door, rang the doorbell, but there were no lights on inside. I waited a few seconds, thinking maybe she'd given me the wrong address. I rang the doorbell again, but still no answer. I was about to give up when I turned my head and saw someone standing at the window. I was a little spooked and stepped back at first, but eventually I moved closer to the window to get a better look. It was an older woman, probably in her late 60s. She was just staring at me with this blank expression, like she was in a trance. I shouted through the glass that I had her pizza. She didn't react, so I shouted louder. That's when a big smile spread across her face. It wasn't a warm, friendly smile, it was the kind that sent chills down my spine. I still remember exactly how she looked, staring at me through that window. I decided I'd had enough and went back to my car, putting the pizza on the passenger seat. I texted my boss about what happened, sent a quick message, and started the car, ready to leave. I glanced to my right for one last look and saw the woman standing outside my car window, giving me the same eerie stare she had before. My heart raced and I hit the gas, driving down the street without looking back. My boss never made me do a late-night delivery again. This happened 4 years ago when I was still in high school, and to this day, I wonder who that woman was and what she wanted from me. I was told to make my last delivery of the shift. I got in my car, a beat-up 1999 Camry that, despite its age, was perfect for delivering pizzas. I plugged the address into the GPS and headed toward the destination. I live in a rural area, so all pizza deliveries involved long drives down dirt roads and through the woods. I remember the sun was starting to set, so it was probably around 7 p.m. The sky was painted in shades of orange and red, and the evening breeze was starting to pick up. After about 15 minutes of driving down dirt roads in the forest, the GPS said I'd arrived. It was an old lakeside cabin, made almost entirely of wood. The house was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense woods and an eerie silence. The lawn was completely overgrown, with grass almost knee-high. I was used to this kind of thing, since a lot of houses in the area looked like this, so I didn't think much of it. I carried the pizza to the front door, but there was no door, just an empty frame. I knocked loudly on the wood, trying to get the attention of whoever was inside. Within 10 seconds, I heard footsteps creaking on the wooden floor. The footsteps reached the door and stopped. I started to feel uneasy, like I was being watched. That's when I noticed the peephole in the door. "It's the pizza guy," I said, trying to sound calm. I heard a low, raspy voice from the other side telling me to take the pizza to the back. I didn't like the idea of going around back, but I didn't want to get in trouble with my boss. The last time I brought a pizza back, he chewed me out. So reluctantly, I walked through the overgrown grass and around the house to the backyard. I remember there was a shed and a small patio back there. On the patio, there was a table with 4 chairs around it. In one of the chairs, facing away from me, I saw the back of someone's head. I started walking over and said, "Excuse me," but the person didn't move an inch. "Excuse me," I said again, louder. Then, behind me, I heard, "Over here." I turned to see a man poking his head out from around the corner of the house, looking at me with a crazy grin. "Come here, I want to show you something." I freaked out, turned around and ran the opposite way around the house, back to my car. For some reason, I was still holding the pizza. I got in the car, started it, and got out of there. On the way back to the pizzeria, I pulled over and called the police. Eventually, I was told there had been no sign of anyone living in that house for a long time. I quit my delivery job a few days later. I have no idea what would have happened to me if I'd gone over to that man, but to this day, I still wonder who or what was sitting in that chair on the patio. I was making deliveries late at night during this particular shift. Back when I had this job, I lived in the Poconos, a very rural area. I often found myself driving down roads surrounded by nothing but trees, just like on this night. Except, this time it was dark and foggy, which made visibility even worse. I was taking a shortcut into town that I'd used many times before when I slammed on the brakes because I saw someone jump out of the bushes and into the road. The jolt and the sickening thud from the front of the car confirmed I'd hit the person. I put my hand to my forehead, cursing myself. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I just hit someone. I got out of the car to check if they were okay. It was a man wearing a black hoodie with the hood up. He was lying motionless, near my front tire. I had no idea what to do in that moment. I was panicking. Why the hell was this guy out in the middle of nowhere? Why did he jump in front of my car? And then things got even weirder. I heard a scream, a cry for help, coming from the woods to my left. Someone was in trouble. I looked at the man I'd hit. He was still on the ground, not moving. I figured I'd only be gone for a minute. For some stupid reason, I thought it was okay to leave him there and go into the woods. I moved in the direction of the scream, hoping to hear another one, but it was just total silence, except for the sounds of nighttime creatures. "Where are you?" I shouted. That's when I heard the sound of a foot crunching leaves on the ground. I turned toward the sound, and even in the dark and fog, I could see the figure of someone hiding behind a tree in front of me. I ran as fast as I could back to my car, constantly looking over my shoulder to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I got back to the car, the man I'd hit was gone. I didn't stick around to wonder where he went. I just got in the car and kept driving down the road. My heart was racing the whole time, but I still ended up delivering the pizza. When I got to the house and rang the doorbell, a middle-aged woman answered. After she paid, I noticed her eyes were focused on something behind me. Then she asked, "Do they let you have delivery partners now?" I was confused and asked what she meant. She said, "There's someone with you in your car." My stomach dropped as I turned around and saw someone sitting in the back seat of my car. I called the police using the woman's phone, and they arrived shortly after, but the person in the back seat was already gone. The creepiest part of this whole story is that the police found a blood-stained knife on the floor of my car, where the man had been hiding. That memory still haunts me every day, and I can honestly say it's painfully terrifying to imagine how things could have turned out if I hadn't made that delivery.